Hello guys, today on Rising Farmers is how to succeed in large-scale corn production.
Profitable maize farming or cultivation, certain things must be taken into consideration. Number one is the field you acquire for the cultivation of maize. Number two is the agricultural practices you also employ in the cultivation of the maize. For here specifically, the land we have here is pretty clay. It's a clay soil, and that will also influence the amount of water we provide for the plants. Not all soils require the same quantity of water or the same application of water at a particular time, but the kind of soil we are using, it informs us on how much water we should provide the plants at what time. So as we have here, the soil is clay, and we could also see that on this particular farm, the spacing between the crops are very extremely accurate. This is very important because we are using drip irrigation so that each plant could get fairly the same amount of water throughout growing season. And on this field, we can see some of the spacing are more than others. It looks like the spacing here is quite bigger than the spacing in there. This is because this field is fully mechanized for the tires of the tractor to go through this side without any interruption. In here, the drip lines are placed between the crops, and it's roughly one lateral for 2 rows. So we place one lateral between the rows over here, and it provides water for both plants. We don't necessarily need one lateral for each row because we are somewhere in the desert, and then water management is also, and water efficiency is one major thing we are looking at, so we don't waste much water because of scarcity of water. So one major thing we should take into consideration is the acquisition of seeds. When you are going into any maize production or any food crop production, where you acquire your seeds is very important. We should be able to acquire viable seeds from certified seed agencies so that we know the germination percentage of the particular seed we are going to grow. When we look here, we see that during the production we have 1 seed per hole. 1 seed per hole. So we see a uniform spacing throughout the entire field. We also see that not only the seed per hole, but because it was mechanized, so we see that we have fairly equal spacing between all the crops. And first of all, when we are going through this field or when we are starting cultivation, it is very important we take into consideration pest and disease control, and then fertilizer application as well. On this field, we use a method called fertigation. We apply the fertilizer in the water, then through the drip lines we flash it on the field. So we can see that after a while, you see the entire field, the surface of the entire field being quite white. This is because after cultivation, after drip lines were taken off for a while, the salt from the fertilizer surfaced on the face of the soil, thus leaving some signs of fertilizer floating on the surface of the soil. One very important thing we should also notice in the supply of water, we don't depend on rain. For you to go into a productive or an efficient or profitable maize production, it's very important that we take into consideration water management as well. Assuming this field was left to the rain, there will be one or two things. Number one, because we are in the desert, we realize that the plant is going to suffer from drought because there wouldn't be enough water to supply to the plant, and that's what's happening in most countries in Africa. Most countries depend on the rain. On every farm, we must ensure sanitation. We must put measures in place to ensure sanitation. We can see on this farm that the farm is very neat, extremely neat, and it's because that's one of the major goals of the farmer, to keep the farm very neat, and then it prevents the challenges of pest and disease control and all those stuff. So when you're able to keep the farm extremely neat, you don't have to bother yourself with disease control and pest control. Keep the farm as neat as your bedroom, so that when you enter the farm, you can feel very excited, very okay. You can feel at home, and then you're gonna be on top of your game. So that's one of the major factors we consider when we are into any farming venture. We don't joke with disease and pest control on this farm at all. So from the onset of production, weed management is taken into consideration, because when there are weeds, you expect pests and then disease as well, because the weeds serve as hosts for these pests and diseases. So immediately you deal with disease control, you are one step forward or one step ahead of controlling the disease and then the pest as well. So for here, the plants don't really face issues of disease because of efficient management. When the field looks very moist, I mean, it's so conducive for diseases and pests. But when we are using drip irrigation, it supplies accurate amount of water for each plant. So this really helps in the control of disease and pests. So basically, you should have everything right at the onset, because when you're starting production, immediately you get it wrong from the onset. You should understand that you are ruining your production at the end, and you wouldn't have any profit margin at the end. You'll be doing it as a hobby, but come on, we are doing agric as a business, not as a hobby. So we see crops are very excited. They are very, 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 very tall. It's because of the variety and the purpose for which we are using these production. So when you take a look, we have a very nice cob over here. This is a fully filled cob. Wow, interesting. I wish I could just make one. Anyway, we have a fully filled cob over here, and we averagely, for the variety we are using over here, we have averagely 1 or 2 cups per plant, and the cups are fully filled. Yeah, when you are only interested in the cups, maybe you might consider a variety which is quite short. When you are only interested in the cups. But here, we are not only interested in the cups, we are interested in the plants as well, the stem and everything, because it's going to be used for silage production for animals. So let's open this and let's see how it looks. Wow. Can you imagine? Wow. Can you imagine? Look at yellow corn and fully filled. So this yellow corn, and it's fully That's a fully filled cob with no potholes. Very nutritious. Very juicy as well, because nice. So comparing this cob of corn to other corns we have, you realize that as I said early on, the cobs are fully filled, very sweet, very juicy. Yes, and that's the optimum. That's what we are looking for. Every farmer should aim for something like this. So when you are falling short of something like this, you should have it in mind that you are running at a loss.